Well, welcome everyone to episode 11 of the Real Profit, Real Perspective podcast. Always be learning. I'm Connor Malatesta, managing partner at Markoff and Malatesta CPAs, and I'm joined by my co-host, someone who has to do more continuing education than I do, Ryan Bannister, owner of One Up Advisors. Ryan, how are you doing today?
Luckily, not drowning in continuing education yet, but I'm trying to
That's
be better
a
about it this year.
I mean, I was going to say, isn't that usually a November problem? No, sorry, a December 20th through 27th problem.
It was last year, and I'm determined to not have that happen this year because that was not good.
I am pretty certain that there are webcasts that I'm supposed to be listening to every week that I constantly, oh yeah, actually, I think they usually occur at about this time on Thursdays that
Yeah.
I constantly don't sit and listen to, and everything turns into a last minute, oh my God, let me get continuing education out. And that is how we are going to introduce today's episode, which is a little more kind of lighthearted than last week's episode, which went heavy into, hiring and teams and all that. It's about learning. And as professionals here in the accounting world, our licenses require us to always be learning to the tune of 40 hours a year. And so we thought, what better way to talk about the value of continuing education than dedicating an entire episode to how you, as a business owner, regardless of the stage that you're in, really should constantly be learning about stuff. So, Ryan, what do you do to constantly learn about the work that you do?
Oh man, what don't I do at this point?
Sit down and read books, probably, considering how much time we're trapped in front of the computer.
Actually, I do that.
Okay, you are better than me.
And I know it.
All right, let's not get ahead of ourselves here. Let's
But I kind of liken it to I think my college days, honestly. And the fact that, a lot of the best things you learn aren't from the textbook. And I think that has a nice corollary to continuing education because while I do complete my requirements and I faithfully am watching the webinars and everything, I don't think you learn quite as much from things like that than as you do from conversations with other business owners, other people in your industry, reading books, podcasts such as this one are great. That's sort of the mix that I do. And I mean, honestly, if I just had to throw it out to pick one, the biggest thing for me is always conversations with people and especially those who have been there, done that before you.
The wildest part of this whole journey of starting a business from nothing and ending up to here and then looking beyond for where I want to be in the future is, I swear, every week I find something new that I didn't know, which sounds really, really stupid to say out loud. Of course, I don't know everything, and I should be learning things, every week. But it really, it's that firsthand, like getting hit in the face with your own shortfall in your own knowledge.
Mm-hmm.
Every week, there's something new that I go, oh, I didn't even know that this was a thing. Whether that's talking to clients on a new industry and how they do stuff, and going, I didn't even know you could get paid to do that, or I didn't know there was that much money in what you do, considering
Right.
making a career change, which I think is what we always say every time we work with content creators sometimes. It's, I'm sorry, you've got what going on? What did we go to school for? But it's just that constant awareness of how little we know, even though we've spent the better part of a decade and a half between work and school, learning things and studying and passing exams, and just how much out there that there is to learn. I mean, we could probably spend the entire episode talking just in our line of work, all the different things that we can study. But I think in anything,
Yep.
I mean, I've gotten some of my best management insights have come from books. I'm a big fan when it comes to lessons on leadership, for example. I think in previous episodes I've kind of brought this up of looking to really, really effective military leaders because they've had those lessons put through literally the fires of combat to really identify what works and what doesn't. And a lot of times it's books are humanity's way of basically crowdsourcing learning opportunities so that we don't have to go through what everybody else did, which really is the point of this whole podcast, is to propagate what we've seen, what we've gone through for everybody else. But I think the I wanted to do just a little more lighthearted here on the importance of constantly looking for ways to continue to better yourself a little bit, new things to learn about. If you're a business owner, you're wearing a lot of hats, so it's always a good idea to read up on all the things that are kind of impacting you. I know you've got a bunch of stuff going on and having to juggle hats just like I do. So I'm going to put you on the spot here. What's something you've had to
Boy.
research lately that you realized you had not as much of a clue as to how it worked as you thought it did?
Ooh, that's a good one. I'm juggling a few things in my head right now because one thing I was going to bring up before you asked the question was sort of on the investment side of the house and the economy. Like there's always things that I'm tracking on that side. And that's I think sort of in that wheelhouse of, staying current on news, and if there are some updates that happen, or like I don't know, new events that happen in the world that you just have to read up on and figure it out to be able to speak to the business part of it, like topically what's happening right now in the economy when we're recording this is tariffs and the war in Ukraine and all of the fun global things that are happening right now. So, to be able to answer client questions in a thoughtful way, that always requires, I think, some additional research and staying on top of news, but in a less, I guess, client servicey way. I'll have to think on that, man. I don't know. What about you?
I mean, my big thing lately has been on really marketing. I mean, the difference between marketing and sales. Sales, that I'm pretty good at talking to people, but it's been a lot of realizing my own weaknesses, and we've talked about this a lot in marketing and what we have to do to kind of put ourselves out there, and reading up on kind of marketing concepts on getting an understanding of why saturation is so important, and why it's important to constantly be in front of people, kept at the forefront of mind, stuff like that, because we're very numbers driven by trade, and that's where a lot of my focus has been. But as I have been working with clients and identifying where a lot of their problems are, not a catch 22 isn't really the way I want to word it, but in a weird way, I can't really solve most of our clients' problems that are having problems, because a lot of it comes down to sales, marketing, and advertising, which is not what we do and not what our services are geared towards. So there's been a lot of research lately in getting an understanding of where they may have shortfalls, who, for example, I can bring in to help clients with those needs, how we can structure our engagements differently going forward to incorporate that kind of thing, thinking about, okay, with what I've seen and what I've done and some of these other ones, what are the kind of the faux pas that I'm seeing a lot of business owners that are making in this context of trying to handle things in house. We did the same thing, and that's where a lot of my kind of focus has been most recently, is on kind of that aspect. Also been doing some reading because I am a huge fucking nerd And there's a YouTuber that I really like. Well, he does a hell of a lot more. To call him a YouTuber is actually kind of disingenuous. His name's Patrick Boyle. He does a lot of finance videos. I believe he's got like a hedge fund he runs, but he puts out a lot of really good YouTube comment. I've been reading his book. Um, oh God, I can't believe I can't remember. I think it's over. I've got a few of his derivatives for the trading floor, statistics for the trading floor, just to get a little more broad up. But it's also corporate finance from a decision maker standpoint, just to continue to try and build, as we've got clients that have more sophisticated advisory needs, to really build the finance portion of my skill set beyond financial accounting and stuff. Getting away from GAAP and putting the financials together, and more of how do we you know pull in the different ratios and do all that, and what does this all mean, and things to be able to help more. So there's, I mean, in our world of professional services, considering that what we do is basically everything that's up in here, it is a never ending struggle in the context. There's always stuff to learn, whether that's industry specific or trying to sit there and correlate everything you've been looking at into, okay, how do we deal with this for the next time? Or who do we, which clients are most susceptible to, going back to the topical, to tariffs? Who is going to get absolutely shafted versus who is going to be relatively insulated? What might be the impact on both our clients and us? What does this kind of look like for the future? What do we have to kind of plan? So, a lot of stuff. Just, I mean, man, there's just so much to learn.
And on that, like, so say just in general, theoretically, like if you have a new thing that you have to learn or research, how do you go about that? Like, what's step one for Connor?
I was hoping you weren't going to ask that. Mostly because I think I picked up some really bad study habits in college, and by study habits I mean last minute cramming.
Yep.
So I this is where I'm supposed to put on airs and be like, well, I go over and read these things every so often, and read the articles and blah blah blah. And I go, no. Usually it's a fever dream in the middle of the night, going, what the hell is happening? But it usually what was your question? To learn something new, how I go about doing that?
Yeah, like where do you start? What's
Google.
like thought one? That's that was honestly part of the answer I expected. So
Yeah, so don't let anybody else know this, but most of the time when clients ask me questions that I don't know, I'm reminded of that thing that doctors deal with a lot, which is my Google is not the same as your Google. And so it's a lot of yeah, it really, if there's a topic or something. So I've been on the hunt lately, and I say on the hunt, just I've been doing some cursory research because I'm trying to find, and this will that if someone may say there, you don't have this already, and you're like, no, fucking don't, fuck off. A database of, for example, different industry benchmarks that I can compare clients to. A need like that hasn't really popped up yet, but I'm just doing some research on what sources are available, what the fuck it's going to cost me. Because there's nobody gives that information out for free, unfortunately.
Mhm.
And just trying to read up on better usage of things like benchmarking in the context of our clients, because a lot of them that we deal with, things get so small that trying to do a benchmark to the industry is useless for something like a solo entrepreneur who wants to, well, how am I doing? You need to make more money. Go out and do sales. How's my benchmark? Doesn't really matter right now. You need to go out and do sales unless you're not making any money, at all. As you get a
Right.
little bit more and things become a little more regular, then you have more comparisons to what's going on with your industry and stuff like that. You start looking at, oh, what percentage of revenue is payroll? It's just you, so doesn't really matter. Everything left over is yours. But Google is where I go for a lot of things, and depending on try and it could talk about how do you look for authoritative sources and stuff like that, which this is dredging up unpleasant memories of college. So of how to cite sources. I majored in accounting, so I didn't have to write papers. So, you
Yeah,
know,
and I I don't think we need to go into that, but the lesson I take from it, and that's something I've told clients for a while, like being a CPA in itself doesn't mean that I have like memorized all of these facts or like the entire gap like rule book. What it
yeah.
means to me is that I have the knowledge and the skill set to go out and find the answer that you need or find the person who knows it. So when you say Google, like I think it's a totally reasonable response. I mean, that is the current day version of going to like the library and getting an encyclopedia or something, So I
I
mean,
mean,
while it's
encyclopedias
funny, like it
online.
is right, it's right.
Yeah, and I think anyone that's in any sort of trade or profession always, you see the people. It's always good to do research in topics you're not familiar with as well, particularly, so if you're a business owner, usually you've got your core thing that you're good at. It's what you started the business around. That's what you get kind of paid to do. And many people that are in, the trades or professional services or anything are usually there's a kind of an implicit understanding for those that want to build their business around being good. Right now, there are some people out there who build their business around being the cheapest absolute option, which sometimes you've still got to do your homework on what are the cheapest ways to do things. Um, our clients are all usually quality first, and usually the people that sell the cheapest work are also the cheapest when it comes to services. So we don't have a whole lot of those. But it's when you get away from a lot of those core competencies, one thing is to always look for other opportunities to research or just learn what other people have done. Perspective as to how things can be done differently will sometimes give you epiphanies that you didn't even really realize were possible until somebody said, "Yeah, no, we just decided to, do things this way." And then you go, "Oh man, you mean I could have been doing that this whole time and
Yep.
save myself so many hours and time and money? Damn it." It there's and
Yep.
a lot of times that hits also in the things that you're not it's not what you focus on as much. I talk marketing just because I'm not a creative type. And so it's just a lot of research there. But a lot of business owners, you turn to podcasts like this because you want to understand the basics and fundamentals of running your business better than you did before, because it will make you better than your competition. Because most people don't put in the effort to consciously better themselves in terms of their knowledge. It sounds probably sounds a little elitist for us to say, but it really is one of those where it is the truth. I mean, we deal with a lot of different people. We get to see a lot of different things. I get introduced to an organization of 40 or 50 people, and you can see who in there is really pushing themselves to learn more and make themselves better versus those that aren't. And that's why people that do that stand out more. Those businesses do better over time because it makes you more competitive and makes you more money, which always blows my mind when people won't do that. But I don't know. What do I know?
Yeah. And for me, at least, like that's where I've found conversations and getting advice from people helps break the cycle. Cause I think that applies to everyone in a sense where, it's like human nature to want to be as comfortable as you can. So regardless of where you're at, like you always kind of slip back a little bit into a comfort zone. And for somebody or a book or a podcast or whatever form it takes, like somebody to like pop the light bulb in your head, that says, "Oh, I didn't even know that."
Yeah, the comfort zone it's both nice and dangerous. And I think particularly when you get into the context of kind of personal development, which honestly, anyone who's listening to this is kind of inclined in that way. Otherwise, if you're not, kudos to you for having made it to the 11th episode of a podcast like this. You are built different, and you are a hell of a person. But the personal, it's not easy, and there's always that temptation of remaining comfortable with what you've got going on, and it's always kind of there because pushing yourself to make yourself better and focus on weaknesses is hard. And there are honestly people that decide not to brutally push themselves like that. I honest to God do not blame them. I really don't, particularly when we've talked about what we've gone through in our personal development, what we've learned over starting the businesses. It's fucking brutal. And so those that don't want to, it's like I don't blame you for kind of doing that, but also time is still going to march on. We are still going to get older day after day,
Mhm.
and we still have to, continue to develop. So, finding ways to, I don't know, comfortably be uncomfortable, whether that's everybody will say read books. If you're like, man, my reading speed is so slow, I can't really deal with it. Audiobooks, that's fine. Whatever content it gives there. You go on YouTube, they've got long form, video essays on topics that are, great to sit and listen to, and just stuff like that, I think is where you can kind of start to keep that. I think you had a point that I may have rambled on a little bit.
No, no, that makes total sense to me, man. And I think, whether you do push yourself to do that or not, I think kind of what we talked about in the previous episode of building a team, like having employees around you is going to just by default kind of push you a little bit.
Honestly, as you say that, I think we could almost kind of recontextualize the title of this episode to not just the continuing education, but no matter what you're doing, learn from the situation that you're in. I
Yeah.
think we ranted about continuing education, but my hands are coming out. I'm getting engaged here. The Italian in me is coming
I
out.
got you going.
Here we are. I'm sitting up. I think the key with this is no matter what you got going on, right? You've got an opportunity to learn from it. Go back to, I think it's episode 4 that we did, which was how do you make a decision? And the whole point of that is make a decision, look at what happens, retool, readjust, make another decision. And it's that retool and readjust, that's the learning from what you've done. Every time you do something new, every time you do something only sort of new, kind of different from what you've done before, anytime you've got those changes, that's a new opportunity to look and learn what the hell did I do? What was the cause and what was the effect? Wisdom is basically just having lived long enough to have gone through that process enough where you go, oh, yeah, you shouldn't do that because I did that when I was younger and boy, did it fuck me up.
Yep.
Everyone was, oh my God, how were you so wise? And you go, I suffered a lot, usually is the answer. Or we sat there and, listened to a whole bunch of people. That's the always be learning part of this is less of, podcasts and stuff like that, which is great because then you can learn from other people and learn from their mistakes. But even in your own life, there's always opportunities every week to learn something new from something you're doing. My mother is a big fan of saying you really should be learning something new every week until you're probably in your 50s. And then it'll slow down to, monthly, and because you've been around and have seen enough. And then, by the time you're 80, you're probably kind of set, and at that point and you're good. You don't have to kind of learn anymore. Although I do think they have found that, learning and pushing your brain helps stave off dementia. So if you should
Yeah.
keep doing that. But that's this episode's takeaway is, it's not just podcasts, it's not just books. Anything you're doing gives you an opportunity to learn how it works, which I know, I'm sure you've got some thoughts on as you've been retooling all your stuff this year.
Oh yeah. And like business and personal, man. Like we've got a 15-month-old son, so that forces a lot of relearning of things like patience and
And learning of all the different ways a small human being can attempt to kill themselves.
oh yeah. What is danger in this world?
And where you look at things and you go, I didn't realize that having the shelving unit was going to be so dangerous. But no, it is not a ladder. Stop trying to climb up it. All right, the shelving unit has to go.
It's like you start learning geometry again too, because if you hold on to this object in a certain way, yes, you can pull it down on top of yourself and leverage things.
You start looking at everything through the lens of, okay, what will the child attempt to do? And what do we need to make sure we see this problem happening
Yeah,
before it
foresight,
happens?
So
You're so wise in the ways of children trying to kill themselves. See, it's wisdom.
yep, that's real wisdom right there. But yeah, man, I mean, I think no matter the arena, there's things that kind of can like force you to do it, or you've got to also be pushing yourself on those things too. But yeah, I don't know where I was going with that.
It's a kind of a nebulous topic.
Yeah.
It's compared to some of our other ones, I think it's a little more pie in the sky. I mean, I think the big thing I have found as I've been going through life is that when you don't learn from what's going on around you, you also end up stuck in that cycle. I just don't understand why this keeps happening to me. You're like, oh, it's because you keep doing the same thing over and over again, you idiot. And what do you mean you're surprised by this? Everyone's been telling you, no, no, don't get back with her. You didn't learn the last time or the time before that. What makes you think this time's going to be any different? You two are toxic together.
Mhm.
That I don't have, for the record, anyone that's listening to that, this is totally made up. I don't have somebody that I'm anonymously calling out right now. um but it really is one of those where when you're actually not learning from stuff, you're gonna learn one way or another, and it's just kind of, easy way or the hard way. Easy way is to look at what happened, adjust, and make differences in the future. Hard way is, well, suddenly life hit you and now you're learning the really, really hard lesson, and you're gonna have to make a change because you can't not change.
Yeah. I don't know why this question just popped into my head, but
Uh-oh.
yeah. So as it related to your business, who or what, maybe just who, do you think you've learned the most from? Or what?
Ooh.
Whatever comes to your head.
Um, man, that's so I've got a smart ass answer. And my smart ass answer is the most that I've learned from in business is myself. Mostly I've learned all the different ways I can screw something up.
Yeah. Yeah.
The long laundry list of things that I have done poorly and inefficiently is second to none. Um, in terms of life lessons, I've taken a lot from my parents. My dad had a business for many, many, many years. My grandfather had a business for many, many, many years, and so I did have the advantage kind of starting out of knowing what they went through. And then really, I think if I had to look at individuals, usually the businesses that we would work with that are doing the worst are the best ones to learn from. When things are good, it's really weirdly enough, there's almost an inverse relationship between how good things are and how much learning opportunity there is. When things
Very
are
true.
awful, when things are terrible, just no good, oh my God, I can't believe we're going through this, you end up learning the most from that situation. When we've had clients that are going through bankruptcies or fraud or losing hundreds of thousands of dollars and we're attempting to do turnarounds, that's where they've learned the most. I've learned the most. They've been the best learning lessons. When stuff is good, weirdly, when you're comfortable, when things are good, you also end up not learning as much because you don't have that same push to learn. I mean, if you had magically $100,000 materialize into your bank account every month, regardless of what you did, you're not really paying as much attention at things as if you've got 10 bucks popping in the account. You gotta really work at it. You're like,
Right.
who cares? So it's one of those where it's been the worst situations that have taught me the most. And then realizing, and this one always sucks, to then look back at those situations and then realize all the things I could have done differently now that we've gone through it. There was a certain person that we both know who was fond of saying experience is that thing you get 5 minutes after you need it. Or might have been 5 seconds. I can't remember. I think it's 5 seconds.
Either way.
Which, honest to God, every bloody day that goes by, I find more wisdom
Yep.
in that sentence. So, yeah, I've learned the most from myself through messing things up, and I've learned a lot. Mentors, I've gotten a lot of good mentorship from my folks, and then
Hmm.
looking at clients and kind of internalizing a lot of their lessons, and then kind of every day I will say that I've gotten pretty good at doing honest self-reflection in how I'm doing. And so by constantly comparing myself to, what a better version of myself, that keeps me improving. How about you? Who have you learned the most from, Mr. Bannister?
Yeah, it's honestly it's really similar for me. Like I thought your answer of yourself is spot on, and that's pretty similar for me, man. You know, all the long list of screw ups and like you said, experience that comes from such things is, I think, what's, I don't know, like taught humans for the our years of existence, as long as we have been around.
The
So
genetic predisposition to fear snakes because a long time ago our ancient ancestors saw one person get bit by a snake and immediately keel over dead
nope,
and
nope.
went, oh hell no.
Exactly. And now when we're on the computer, something like that scares us. So
I don't know what you're talking about. I've never been afraid of anything on the computer. Definitely haven't jumped at those videos online when you see the, South American anacondas or whatever, does it suddenly leap at the camera and you toss your phone away because you're a coward.
yeah. Yeah, not the video I saw the other day of two zookeepers trapped in a pen with a gorilla. They were trying to get out. It's like my heart was pounding. So
Watching those going, man, really glad we keep everything. I don't have to get in an area with a gorilla.
right, right. But yeah,
Although
man. I mean, myself and all the long list of lessons that have come with business, but for me too, growing up, and I think I mentioned this in our episode 0 intro episode, but to go a little deeper into it. So I mean, I grew up with a dad who owned a business, and my mom was kind of sucked into that world when she married into it. So then they had us, me and my brother, and we've lived the life of entrepreneurs and business owners for essentially our whole lives. And then I decided to go out and do it too. So,
sounds like there's a learning lesson here for ladies. Be careful when you marry a guy who's got a business.
watch out, watch out, Kathleen.
You fooled her. You waited until after you were married. You're like, ha ha, got you now.
Yeah.
Yeah, you're too in love with me to leave now that I'm starting a business. I probably should be saying all this while I'm still single. Be like, hey, what did you mean by all this? I don't know what you're talking about. That's fake news. AI. It was all AI. That wasn't me. So here's a question for you. So on the topic of yourself making mistakes and learning from yourself, how often have you found yourself seeing a client or somebody else make a mistake and you go, all right, I'm not going to do that. And then you get put in a similar situation and you avoid that mistake just to turn around and make one that's closely related and you don't just get through it without making any sort of screw ups?
I think there's a couple times where I think you kind of alluded to this earlier, but like client meetings or working through issues with them, or like on the other hand of it is what popped into my head, like when they do something actually really smart that I hadn't thought of before, and then incorporate that into future practices. Like things like that, or
I mean, you know, they do say that imitation is the sincerest form of flattery.
yeah, exactly. Like you just always got to be aware of what's going on.
My favorites are particularly in the realm of project management, because that's a big thing that I've been working on lately. Is I've got new people and we're doing total renovations of what I thought was a good idea before, and then it gets limit tested and we find out it's not a good idea. Is I have found myself making the same mistakes, not even a variation on a theme, the exact same mistakes as I have seen, for example, other CPAs at firms make when it comes to project management, where I become the holdup and stuff like that. And all I can do is sit there
Mm-hmm.
and go, damn it, I'm supposed to be smarter than this. What do you mean I just caused a week-long delay because I forgot to send an email? Damn it, I know better. I've been through this before.
Happened to me last week. Actually.
Somebody going, hey, did you follow up with them yet? No, damn it. I should know better. Why does this keep happening? You know what? You're gonna handle this going forward. I apparently I am the problem child
Yep.
here. Those ones are
Yep.
the worst, is when you make the exact same mistakes you've seen other people make and you know not to, and then you look at it and you're like, no, this is a totally different situation, and then it happens, you get hit in the face, and you're like, there was nothing different at all. This was the same thing. I'm just as silly as everybody else.
Yep.
Which
Yep.
actually gives me I think a good learning. Here's a learning lesson I've learned, which is that I am not as different from everybody else as once upon a time I thought I was, which has been a weird both comfort to understand that a lot of the human experience is shared, and also to say, yeah, no, I'm susceptible to the same shortcomings as everybody else. Um, it's just that understanding of I can be just as dumb as everybody, which sounds so fucking conceited to say. But we all have things where we think, well, obviously they'd fall for that, but not for me.
Right.
You know, to get topical with things that pop up in the news. Propaganda, for example. Everybody thinks they're not going to fall for propaganda. And then we all went and watched Top Gun Maverick and went, oh my God, this movie was amazing. It's great that we're making blockbusters again. And we just sat through, 2 hours of Navy recruiting and went, fuck yeah, beach
What a great
scene.
movie.
It's such a good movie. I tell man, if only all propaganda was like that.
If only all propaganda had Miles Teller in it.
So all right, I'll let you have Miles Teller. I'm gonna say Tom Cruise and Glenn Powell.
I'll take that trade. I'll take that.
That for me has been one where I have to constantly remind myself that, yeah, I'm good at what I do, but I am just as susceptible to the same psychological shortcomings as everybody else, and so don't think that that's going to be different. And weirdly enough, when I start to kind of approach it like that, it makes it a little easier to plan.
Mm-hmm.
And go, oh yeah, I could fall for that too. So let's make some adjustment here instead of waiting for myself to get burned. I don't know. Maybe that's just me, and I am just an idiot after all, and I shouldn't be confessing all this.
We'll let our listeners be the judge of that, but I I think it's like you said. I mean, so much of it is the shared experience of it all, and you just have to kind of like there's some things I think you just have to have happen to you to avoid making it, even if you know all about it. Or on like one hand, you see something coming and it's like target fixation, so you end up doing it anyways.
I
So
th- I think that going through it is also an interesting one. Going back to last week's episode, particularly on when you hire your first person as like a solo entrepreneur, where it's pretty much always going to be reactive. And I have found time and time again, I can watch somebody go through something. I can understand the lessons that they learned from it. but I don't fully get it until I'm in the midst of it. The obvious example for you would be something like having a kid. You know, I'm sure you've seen plenty of people go through it. You understood a whole lot, but it does nothing to really convey or really understand the situation until you're going through it and you're like,
You have that
oh,
first person scare. Yeah.
yeah, you know, when you're really you get your hands dirty and you're like, okay, I get, you know, now what they meant. I
Right.
think back to some my grandparents are fond of saying that a marriage is a business partnership, and you know, treat it as such. And
Absolutely.
I kind of understood it, but it wasn't until I had a actual business partner, because I ended up having a business partner before I got married because I've been single this whole time, where as we've been working through things and all that, I'm sitting there and as we are learning better how to work as a team and stuff, I went, oh, oh, that's why they said that. I get it now. Now I see why they say communication is the bedrock of every relationship. Damn it.
Right?
And you can read the lesson, you can see the lesson, you can be told the lesson, but you don't get it until you're living the lesson, which, you know, try and go through the lesson only once.
I think that's the key. I think that's the key there.
Always be learning from your lessons here, so you don't have to go through them multiple times. You know, if you're gonna mess up, do it once.
Right. Yeah, you are going to make mistakes. So you might as well learn from them and try not to make it again.
You know, if you end up on your fifth or sixth marriage, maybe you should just understand that might not be for you. You know, it is okay after a certain point to call it quits. Be like, nope, tried half a dozen times. This ain't working. This
Yep.
this just isn't for me. That's okay. That's okay. I, I don't really have a segue from this. I think that basically sums up everything in my jaded sense of humor here.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, for me, main takeaway, I think we just said it, like embrace the mistakes, and that's where you're going to learn. Like, I mean, we both said it. That's where we both learned the most from. And being able to like share that with other people in your situation or have been there before is, I think, at least for me, the best way to learn and I don't know, set myself up for success, I guess, in the future.
Yeah, when you internalize the learning process, it does make things easier because then you understand you don't have to get it perfect the first time.
Yeah.
You just
Yeah.
have to not have it blow up in your face, and then you can improve from there. But you know, learning's it's a lifelong journey. It really is. I mean, really, you shouldn't stop learning things until they put you in a box and put you 6 feet underground. But speaking of learning new things, I think for those that are looking for some more concrete lessons, we'll be very excited for next week's episode, which is titled Cash Flow Forecasting. How? We'll see you all there.